the whole tone chasing thing is a young man's game. Hey, it's Dave. Welcome back to the channel. Earlier, I had been looking at some YouTube videos and saw Michael Schenker went into a place called Matt's Music in France. And they were showing him a few guitars, and then they showed him a Dean Flying V, one of his models or whatnot. And they asked him about pickups, and he was like, I don't know anything about pickups. I don't care about that. I just play. If it feels and sounds good, I'm in. And I thought that was very funny because I remember an article when I was in my early 20s in a guitar magazine that talked about a new Michael Schenker album coming out and how in the studio his guitar was constantly being taken apart and pickups put in because they were trying a different pickup like on every song. I thought that was interesting. Now, as an older guy, he's like, I don't care. And I remember reading that article because at the time I had this idea. I was like, what if we make a joint like what Gibson does now with the clicking thing, but this was way back in the early 90s, late 80s, that I could just lock in and it would be like a joint where you could actually build it into the guitar so the pickup could just click right into place. And I had an idea, it was called the pickup joint, kind of like a pickup joint. And you could sell it directly to pickup companies to make it with it, or people could buy it as an aftermarket. And at the time, I remember running it by Tom Schultz from Boston, because Tom, at that point, was very friendly. I can't recall if they were dating or they were just friends, but there was a bartender I worked with, and they always hung out after work, and so they would drag me along, and I would go to this place up in Boston called Harper's Ferry, and we would play pool and throw darts. And one day I sat with him, and I said, hey, I have this idea. And he actually went first. I think I had to call his attorney. We had to get some non-disclosure stuff going through. And anyways, turns out he ended up passing on the idea, and he had his reasons why, and they made sense to me at the time. And looking back, it's probably because of what I've come to know now is that this whole idea of tone chasing and swapping pickups constantly is really a young man's game. And when you get older, you kind of figure out what you like and settle on it. And it's like, if it's in the ballpark or somewhere where you want to hear, the chasing of it is not that important to you. What's more important is the playing, getting, what you want out of the instrument. It's very interesting. So as a young guy around that time, a friend of mine, it must have been like around 91 or 92, I had bought the first version of the dual rectifier. Now, I don't remember exactly which one it was, but it was probably one of the earlier ones. Because I bought it in 91. Around that time, a friend of mine had a JCM 800, a 2210 that was modded by Lee Jackson. And another buddy of mine had a 2500, 50-watt JCM 900, no reverb. And we brought them to a rehearsal studio, and we decided we were going to keep them there for a couple of days, and every day we'd go down there and play different things through them and see what we liked. And we went into Daddy's Junkie Music Store in Boston, and we bought a bunch of different pickups. One of the pickups I bought was a DiMarzio Fred. And this was, I believe, before Joe Satriani attached his name to it. It was just brand new. The guy at the store was like, yeah, it's brand new, and it came in, it was green. And I was like, I'll throw it in my guitar because it's white. So at the end, when we finally were comparing the three best sounding pickups / guitars, one of the pickups was a Schaller that came in the Beretta. The other one was a DiMarzio Fred, which I liked the best. And the third was an original PAF out of an old Gibson. And that was very, very good. I mean, It's really close to the Fred. Fred to me was just a touch brighter, and I like that. And again, in my age of now, I would just simply go over and put more treble on the amp. I wouldn't care. But at the time we did that, so I really got into the Fred, and that's how that pickup became the pickup that I use. And I haven't really used anything since. I've put a transition pickup in just because I would try it. But for the most part, if I'm going to go buy a guitar and I like the way it feels, I'm thinking to myself I'm going to swap it and put a Fred in. Unless I go to plug it in and the pickup sound in the ballpark of where I want it, then I'm like, I don't need a Fred. And I've done that before with the guitars that I've had burst buckers in. Burst bucker 2 and 3 are great. And also, like when it comes to amplifiers, so you see I have some Marshalls back here, the 2100 and the DSL 50. And I think those are going to hold its value, and they sound pretty good. And you can make any Marshall. It's like you see these videos with Johann Seghorn. I can't remember how to say his name. But either way, and he's comparing the amps, and it's like, oh, I could make that one sound like this one if you just turn up the treble and turn out the bass. This one's got the mids are more pushed, so just turn them. I mean, you're taking these amps and you're looking at everything where everything's at midnight. You know, all the knobs are. But if you could easily dial them all in to sound like one another, and there's a lot of gear out there that's good, and it's funny to me because I see some of these videos and people are still talking about like gear and like, does this guitar sound as good as this guitar? Well, if you take an Epiphone Les Paul and you have a Gibson Les Paul, and one has burst buckers, but the other one you put 2 DiMarzio Freds in and hand it to me, and all the pots have been changed out of the Epiphone to like Bourne's pots or whatever, and you hand me that guitar and I record with it, it's going to sound fantastic. In fact, I'd probably like the sound of the Epiphone than I would with the Les Paul. And that's just me. And some people on YouTube or who watch my videos, they're like, oh, you can't do that. You think you can take a cheap Squier and make it sound like a custom shop Strat? Yes. Yeah, I can. I just have to take out all the electronics and swap them. And will it feel as nice from the player? Well, that's opinion. And probably not. My opinion would probably be like, no, I like the custom shop. I like the big fat, neck. I don't like all the gloss on it. There's going to be things that I like better. Now, somebody may like the Squier better, and that's fine. That's valid. If that's what they like, that's what they like. But obviously, the Squire's not made as nice, but anyway, I just thought it made me think about the fact that like the whole tone chasing thing is a young man's game, because like here I am doing this channel and sharing stories, and I'm using a Fender Mustang amplifier, and this thing cost me $100. I think I paid $125 off of a pedal steel player that bought it and used it in a rehearsal with me one time. And instead of driving all the way back from the North Shore down to the South Shore in Boston, she was like, do you want to just buy it off me? And I just PayPal'd her the money and took it home. And it's great. I didn't know how good it was going to be or what I was even going to use it for. And then when I started this channel, I plug it in. And I can make it sound good. You can watch my videos. Now, sometimes my videos, the guitar tone isn't like what it is, but I'm working with like a lot of different variables here. Sometimes I don't like the sound of the guitar that was on the record, and I'm trying to do a little change to it. You can pick up a guitar, and the more you play, and the more you practice, and the more you focus on the craft of what it is you do as a player, you'll find that you need fewer and fewer. And that's what I've come to realize. And here I am again with a wall of amps. Now, amplifiers are a thing I love because that is really the voice of these instruments. And, you can listen to a record and be like, oh, that's that classic Marshall tone. Or you can hear a record and be like, oh, that sounds like a Gibson going through a Tweed Deluxe. Or that sounds like a Gibson going through a Princeton, really hard driven. There's that sound, and a lot of it has to do with the more of the variable is the amp, and like a Leo Fender really amplifiers. I mean, that's what he was. He was a radio builder. So when it came to building amplifiers, that's really where the magic is. It's, you have even Marshall's a modified Bassman's, I can't recall which Bassman circuit it is, but it came out in 62. So it's probably a 59 Bassman from what they did in 59. The Mesa the original Boogie, I think, is a 55 clone that's put in a Princeton case. But it's a Bassman 4x10 head that was reconstructed inside of a chassis to be put into a Princeton size 1x12. So, a lot of amps are just really, modified amps from the original classic amps. And, if you like a certain sound, I really love a 6v6 sound. I love that Princeton sound, so that's going to be my next amplifier, will be a Princeton clone of some kind. And why a clone is because Vintage Sound Amps makes a Princeton clone where it makes sense. He knows that the original Princetons were like a student model, so, some of the things were done on the cheap to keep the price low, and this guy forgoes that. He's basically like, let's put the best of what if somebody were going to make it for himself and not be a student model and not worry about the price. And he put a 12-inch speaker in it, and it sounds really great, and I'm dying to get one. But I wouldn't go modifying it myself to go chase that tone. Anyway, I guess my advice, if you want to call it that, would be to get out there and play. Play, and don't worry about the gear. And, unless you're a collector, and if you're a collector, well, then worry about the gear, because that's what you're doing. You're collecting gear. And, but that's not a player. And I think it's unfair for some people, because even I have made comments about guys like Tone King. Tone King's a collector. Seems like a super nice guy. He loves to collect instruments. The thing I think that where it throws it off is then he's doing videos where he's playing things and comparing sounds, and he shouldn't do that, because that's not really what he is or what he does. He's a collector. And the instruments are beautiful that he buys. He buys gorgeous instruments. But, he's a collector. And so when you sit there and it's like when he's doing a video about, does this modeling amp sound as good as this amp? He shouldn't even be in that conversation. That's not a conversation for him to have. That modeling amp is not a collecting piece. Therefore, what he does with it or what he can do with it means nothing to anybody with an ear. But if you had a guy like John 5 sit down with a modeling amp and play some crazy licks and then go on a tube amp and play crazy licks, you're going to be like, he sounds great on everything. It doesn't effing matter. And that's the people that could be telling you or should be telling you, is this amp worth the $1,000 difference? That's the guy you should be telling you, not the guy that's struggling to play both. That's all I'm saying. And not to disparage him, because I don't in any way, and I think he has a great channel. I think he's a fun guy. Seems like he's a cool guy, but he's a collector, and a good collector at that. People really enjoy what he's collecting and all that. My channel's definitely not a collecting guy channel. It's definitely I like to consider myself a player. I'm trying anyways, but if anyone's going to be critical of my playing, it's me. You have no idea when I see the stuff I post, and I'm just like, oh my God, it's awful. And then people will comment and say, oh, that sounds just like the record. I'm like, what record do you have? But with the equipment that I'm using, I go through OBS Studio when I film. And when I use OBS, I'm going in with, I'm playing to backing tracks that are on the computer already. And then I'm going in with my amp. Well, the backing tracks and the amp do not record to OBS in the exact same time. The backing tracks that are already on the computer hit the OBS Studio much faster. This has some latency. So I then have to figure out in OBS how can I get the latency of the backing track? How can I slow that down? And so it's trial and error. So like a lot of times when I'm recording a solo or doing a music thing, I'm doing it like 5 or 6 times, just trying to get the timing. So when I play the downbeat against the record, it's hitting the downbeat on the record. And then by that time, I'm like already warmed up, and then I just try to bang it out, and I don't want to do it any more than that. But yeah, for the most part, it's pretty crazy. But if I do get the vintage sound amp, I will do a demo of that. And I haven't really done any demos of. I mean, I did a demo of my Vox Night Train, but I haven't really done demos of the amps, of the real amps, because it's really not what I do. But I think the vintage sound amp's something special, and I should. When it comes to the whole thing with gear, it's kind of hard for me because a lot of people now will email me through the channel and ask me questions about should I buy these pickups or not. And I'm like, I don't know. How the hell do I, like, I don't know. Like, I can't imagine that everybody that plays the DiMarzio Fred picks it up and plays it and has the same reaction I had. I just can't imagine that. In fact, I remember one time, before the area pickups came out. Now, the area pickups are something else. I really love the DiMarzio area single coils. And on all my Strats, if you've seen my videos, if they're 3 single coils, it's a Pro 54 in the bridge and a 58 in the middle and the neck. John Bingham from my Guitar Talk also uses that now and really loves it. He stayed away from the Pro 54 long enough, but he couldn't resist. He came to it and loves it. So before that, I used to use what was called the Heavy Blues, which Buzz Featon turned me on to way back. And I think it was called the DP 409 or 403. I cannot remember which one he used. But whatever one he used is the one I put in the guitar. And I remember having Steve Travato play it. And Steve was just like, held his nose. And I said, oh, you don't like that pickup? And he's like, it's too nasally to me. And he's like, I'm a Seymour Duncan guy. So I checked out the Seymour Duncan pickups that he was using, and I hated them. And it's just, what, is Steve not a great player? He's phenomenal. So it's like everybody hears different things in different voices, and they hear it differently. So in that respect, it's pretty interesting. So when people ask me about the Fred, I always say, well, I love it. I don't know if you will, but I love it. I love the Fred. I love those DiMarzio pickups. Now, am I crazy about the like Evolution or the Breed or the Super Distortion? No, I don't like them at all. In fact, I like the Air Classics, but there's a lot of pickups by DiMarzio I don't like. And Steve Blucher from DiMarzio would be the first guy to tell you they're not for everybody. In fact, he doesn't care for a lot of the style of pickups that his company makes because he likes a certain sound too, but he's not in the business to make pickups for himself. But when I'm just saying, when people ask me about, is this a good pickup? How the fuck do I know what you like? I don't know. I'm not your, you know what I mean? It's like, shit. I mean, there's so many records out there that are selling millions of copies that I would never buy. It's like, and you're asking me my opinion? I don't know. Anyways, that's where I was going with that. Speaking of Michael Schenker, it's funny, I don't really bring him up a lot, and I don't bring him up as a player that influenced me a lot. And it's funny, the more I go back and again and listen to it, I'm like, oh my, did I take a lot from this guy. So then had me thinking about like who the guitar players were, because I have a list, and I posted a list the other day of my top guitar players like today who I would put in a top 10 list. And then I thought, you know what, I'm going to end this show with a top 10 list of guitar players who influenced me the most in my first 10 years of playing guitar. So here that comes, and very good.
can't be no more in between. Your God says you cannot give up.